Okay, recording has started.
Okay, and Catherine, if you go to on top of where we're all stacked and you see all of our, if you go to the top of that, you'll see like a single line, a bigger fat line, a double stacked line, and a grid line. If you click on the single one, that only puts the one person who's talking above that. So when you're doing the recording, that's all you're going to see. Remember I told you all those stacked lines where everybody's faces were showing up?
Yes, I have that option already ready to go, and we should be good to go.
And then that way, as you record, you're only getting the one person.
Perfect. And
Catherine, I'm afraid I'm still only open, so I still can't turn on the closed captioning.
give me about 10 more seconds. Let me see what I can do.
Okay.
I have assigned the closed captioning to you. Did that change anything for you, Steve? Great.
Okay. So here, let's do exactly what I did. Closed caption. Why is it not doing what it did last time?
You know what, Steve, if you want to try and mess around with it as we go, I don't want this. So Eric,
that's just fine. I'll happily keep messing around with it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Eric, if you want to go ahead and start going, that'll work perfect.
Cool. Thanks, Catherine. My name is Erik Jimenez, everyone. I work in the state treasurer's office, and I'm a person with a disability, and we run a super cool program. In addition to running, managing all the state's money and investing that money, we run a program called ABLE accounts. Some people have heard of it, some people haven't. I always argue that it's probably one of the biggest things for people with disabilities that has been passed since the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it's a super cool program that helps people with disabilities save and find financial independence. So that's me. This is my good friend Jack, who I'm sure some of you know and is a very good friend of Partners in Policymaking and the Governor's Council. Jack has Down syndrome, just happens to, but he owns his own small business. And before he had an ABLE account, Jack was forced to keep all of the money that he made in the business because his family was so scared that he would lose access to his Social Security disability benefits and his Medicaid. So what he started doing, he opened an ABLE account. He's able to save that money without losing his benefits. And now he's living in an apartment on his own. He's still running his business. I think he's doing popcorn deliveries today, but it's really cool how something like this allowed him the tools that he needs to start saving and having financial independence. So we know that roughly 13% of the population has some sort of a disability, depending on what number you use. They're more than twice as likely to be unemployed, and they're more than twice as likely to be living in poverty. And I don't know about you all, but I don't think that's good enough. And we've established a system where people with disabilities can only save up to $2,000 a year, or about $1,200 a month, without losing access to those benefits that they need so much, like Medicaid and Social Security. So briefly, an ABLE account kind of does four things. It allows you to save, it allows you to spend using a checking account or a debit card, just like your able-bodied peers. Planning. It's a way to start planning So that if you have kiddos that are in the school system and they might be on an IEP, how can we start to integrate some financial literacy curriculum around them and show them the value of saving and how they can become financially independent? And the next piece is kind of the most important. It's a way to empower folks with disabilities to spend money on the things that they need to as they see fit. Traditionally, savings accounts for people with disabilities have often been tied to the person who's the family member or who owns a special needs trust, and it's never been at the discretion of the person with the disability. So, we don't really know if they want to, buying a bunch of shoes each month, their SSI checks each month for fear of breaking their benefit cap. But with an Able account, they can save that money and then they can spend that money as they see fit to live their life independently. So I go around the state and around the country sometimes talking to everyday folks, families with kiddos with disabilities, friends and neighbors, public and private guardians, and folks like you. And we're really just trying to spread the word and answer any questions, because this is a really difficult time. And as we're all coping with COVID-19 and stimulus dollars coming in to people with disabilities, I think it's an even more important conversation now rather than ever before. So originally it was introduced in Congress in 2008. It took 6 years to law by President Obama, and states were required to set up their own programs, their own Able account programs. So there's about 5 big programs throughout the country. And in last legislative session, we worked with our Aging and Disability Services partners to move the program entirely in the Treasurer's office. So if you ever have a question about an Able account or how to save for someone with a disability, we are your one-stop shop in the State Treasurer's office to answer any of those questions. So I like to clear up a bunch of myths that people may have heard about what Able accounts, can and cannot be used for. So I like to quote the statute, which is really, really boring, but briefly, you can see that money in an Able account shall not be used to calculate personal assets for disability, medical, or other health benefits administered by the state. So that is your welfare supportive services, your Medicaid, your Social Security, and your food stamps, your TANF dollars, those sorts of things. And then it's used to calculate personal assets for student loans or grant programs. So if you have money in an Able account, it won't affect as long as you fall within certain limits, which we'll talk about, it won't affect your eligibility or break your benefit cap for these programs, which I think is really, really important. So in order to be eligible for an Able account, and I think this is kind of more relevant to the population here, you have to have had a qualifying disability, and that term is a little nebulous, so we can go over that occurs prior to the age of 26. Doesn't have to be diagnosed by the age of 26, but it just has to have been present. So a good barometer to know if you're eligible for an Able account is if you're entitled to SSI or SSDI, you're automatically eligible. So that's your DD, your developmental disability population, so your CP, your Down syndrome, those sorts of folks, your intellectual disabilities, those sorts of things, and any other major disability that occurred before the age of 26. So blindness, deafness, those sorts of things, autism. And then there's some disabilities that kind of fall into a gray area, and we can address those if anybody has questions on an individual basis. So we have this money and we want to open an Able account. So what can we use that money for? The bill in Congress was originally crafted to be as broad and encompassing as possible. And the categories you can see on the screen, ranging from education, health and wellness, housing, transportation, legal and financial management fees, employment training and support, assistive technology, that's a really big one for the blind community and the deaf and hard of hearing community, and then other expenses. And I think I get a question a lot, Well, I have this money in an Able account. Could I, spend it to go on a trip to Disneyland? And while you may not want to go to a trip to Disneyland right now, as we're all staying at home, I can make an argument that if it improves your health and wellness, that you could use money in your Able account to take a trip or buy a car or anything like that. So I think it's important that we're keeping records, and that one of the options that we offer is through a debit card, which helps to track expenses. But as long as you fall within one of these categories, expenses are not submitted to the IRS and they're not counted against your benefit caps for means tested programs. You don't have to prove eligibility, but you do have to sign an affidavit when you sign up for an Able account. And to date, the IRS hasn't audited anybody, but they may in the future. That's why I like the debit card option, so you can track expenses. In the event that a family was ever audited or those sorts of things, it'd be very easy to pull those records up. So we know that you can only save probably about $2,000 a year to keep your SSI resource limit right now. In an Able account, you can keep a total balance of under $100,000, and that'll be excluded from the SSI resource limit. Now, you can put $15,000 per year into an Able account, but if you're working through different legislation that also passed, you can put an additional $12,060 per year. So if you're a person with a disability that's eligible for SSI and or Medicaid, you could have family contribute $15,000 a year, and you're safe from losing your benefits. And if, let's say, you're working, like my friend Jack, he can put up to $27,000 a year, which is really, really significant because, predominantly this population of folks has been relegated to sub-minimum wage jobs and jobs that don't pay well, on the argument alone that they can't earn too much, they'll break their benefit cap. This is kind of the first step in how encourage people with disabilities to find real competitive integrated employment and make sure that they can earn fair wages like their peers. So some states offer tax deductions for Able accounts. So if you've got friends in other states, it might make sense for them to go with their particular state plan. We don't have a income tax here in Nevada, so it's kind of irrelevant. So, you could sign up for any state plan that you wanted. And if you have 529 college savings accounts, which some families do for their other kiddos to go to college, you can transfer some of that money into an Able account as well. So I'll stop there for a second. Are there any questions immediately from the group?
Eric, this is Ellen Marquez.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. I have a question because you were talking about state tax and everything. So at the end of the year, because we do have the Able account for Alyssa, at the end of the year, because she's taking, our plan is to take her monies her wages that she earns and do a direct deposit from her employer to put it in there. Do we need to fill out taxes and show that money going someplace?
That's a very good question, Ellen, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head. My guess is yes, depending on what the employment situation looks like. So if she's not a 1099 independent contractor, because all of this money is post-tax anyway. So theoretically, you've already paid taxes on it to the federal government before you put it in an Able account. The money that grows in it is tax-free. So let me figure out what the mechanic to do for that is, and I'm happy to send that to you as soon as I find it. But that's a really good question.
Perfect, thank you.
Anybody else? So I know this kind of sounds complicated, but it's actually really easy to open an account. The best way is to go to savewithable.com/NV, and that'll take you to our Nevada specific page we're always working with our partners that administer the accounts to make the form more accessible. And I think we've done that over the past couple of months, but we're always striving to do that. In addition, we have a call center that's still open in light of COVID-19, but otherwise, you'll get my contact information at the end. So if you ever have any questions, I can walk you through how to open an account, but it really takes about 5 minutes to do. And I always like to tell people, even if you don't think you're going to use it, it doesn't hurt to have one. Whether you're a family member or a person with a disability, you might come into a situation like, look, oh, I just got $1,200 the federal government in a stimulus package. How do I want to make sure that that money's protected and then it could grow without affecting my benefits, even though the stimulus dollars won't affect your benefits? ABLE accounts are a really interesting way to start saving now so that you can have some money in the future if you need it. So we participate in an alliance of states. There are 16 states that account for about 40% of the whole number of ABLE accounts in the country. These numbers are a little out of date, but we're seeing account balances. The average balance that someone has in their ABLE account is about $5,500, which is really cool because before you would have someone that's maybe getting services from a regional center or at a sheltered workshop that, you know, is forced to spend down their SSI income every month. Let's say they have $60 or $100 left at the end of the month, and they have to spend it on meaningless, you know, supplies or household goods. They can keep that money in there every month and allow it to grow. So what I argue is the ABLE account has completely eliminated the need for the spend down when someone is under a guardianship or a rep payee or some of those other things. And we participate in this state alliance, not to make it more confusing, but states programs, but we do it because it's the right thing to do. We want to offer people with disabilities mechanisms where they can save and start living more independently and not be dependent on family members or institutionalizations that, you know, don't allow them to maybe pursue a job that they want to or get the training that they want to do. So we do that to keep the fees lower. And when we keep the fees lower, we can keep operating the accounts and keep doing fun things to incentivize growth. So this is where it gets a little tricky, but each ABLE account is given an option, an investment option. So this is another interesting thing, and our largest bucket of folks are age 15 to 18. So we're seeing a large number of families who have kids in the school system, and they want them to start learning some financial literacy path that you are required to learn about financial literacy and ABLE accounts in the school system. So another kind of component of this is you can choose your investment strategy if you want to. And those vary from conservative investment options to aggressive investment options. I can't tell you what to do with your money, but I would argue right now is probably not the best time to pick an aggressive option. But the important thing is that it gives the person with the disability choice if they want to see their money grow. I met a young woman that was from Massachusetts a couple months ago. She had an ABLE account and she moved it into the aggressive right before the market started kicking up. So she made a bunch of extra money that she never thought she would have made just because she did that. And she was able to do that you know, without having to have some complicated like fund manager or something like that. So they're very easy in the application process. You can select which one you like. And if you get uncomfortable, you can change that option, whether or not you want a conservative or moderate or aggressive investment strategy. Now, I would argue there's one option that doesn't involve investments, and this is my favorite option, but it's an FDIC insured debit card option. So if you want a debit card for your family member or for yourself, it's a lot more flexible, especially when we're doing things like direct deposits from family members or direct deposits from employers. If the person with the disability has a debit card that they can use the funds on the ABLE account, we can track can monitor expenses and no can't tell a person with a disability what they can spend their money on, I think families can start to make decisions together and, take some risk. And sometimes it's scary to let people with disabilities, control their own money, but we're never going to let them be independent if we don't allow them to take some risks and sometimes fail. But that's why we're there for them with a net when they, if that happens. So the FDIC insured option is really interesting for times like now where the economy is a little more scary, but it gives you that flexibility, and you don't have to write paper check to. Right now, there's a $25 minimum contribution to open an account. We're trying to figure out ways that we can waive that, especially during the COVID-19 kind of pandemic. But if for some reason you want to open an account and you don't have that $25, call me, call us. We'll figure out a way that we can cover that. There's some grants and things like that that we can do to start to open that account. And then the maintenance fees on it are super, super low. It's about $11 a quarter if you have an electronic statement. And those fees are significantly lower than if anybody were to open a checking account or anything like that. And I think it's important to note that if you do choose one of those investment options and don't choose the debit card option, there are some fees associated with that. But that's kind of just the cost of doing business when you have an investment account, and they vary. So if you have a conservative strategy, it will be lower in fees than if you have an aggressive strategy that involves you to move money around more or involves the manager to move money around. But ideally, we're just trying to get in front of as many folks as possible to meet people where they are in the community. And I think as we have a more robust discussion on employment with people with disabilities and like how do we make sure they're financially secure, so if we do have an economic crisis or we do have a situation where people are out of work, that we're not putting people with disabilities on the streets simply because they can't pay a bill within 30 days. So I think ABLE accounts, especially right now, are really, really interesting in finding ways that we can not only teach financial independence and financial literacy and those sorts of things, but also finding ways to kind of create a safety net for folks with disabilities so they don't have to be entirely dependent on Medicaid and Social Security. We'd like to get to a point where we're offering money to incentivize account growth. We're almost there, but we're not there yet. But I'm hopeful that we can do that in the near future. And that's why we need all of your help. You talk to folks in the disability community. So whether it's a special education teacher or a principal or a union leader or an employer, we want to make sure we get the word about these out there to understand, it can be a little tricky hiring a person with a disability, but if we set the mechanic up right, we can do them a lot of good and allow them a lot of independence that they wouldn't otherwise have had. With that point, that's kind of all I have on this. Are there any questions?
I'm going to go ahead and unmute you all. If you would like to, actually, I'm not going to unmute you all. Please unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question. You can also send them through the chat as well, and I can ask them for you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay. So you said it's like having a 529 account.
Yes.
Can they be funded with pre-tax dollars?
So no, the answer to that is no. It's similar to a 529 in that it's under a similar IRS chapter. So whereas on the 529 plan, you're putting money in for a tax savings on that. On this, you're not getting penalized on it on the means tested benefits side. So it's kind of operating under that assumption, but all of that money going in should theoretically, if you're in Nevada, because we don't have an income tax. So I think that's where it kind of differs. If we did have an income tax, there are states that do like pre-tax dollars for that, but we don't. So that money's theoretically already had taxes paid on it, unless you can also put SSI or SSDI money in, and you're not getting taxed on that anyway. So that I guess that's a way that it wouldn't be taxed. And then it's important to note that if that money is growing, so if you have an investment strategy that allows that to grow, those are not subject to taxes. So all the growth in those accounts, similar to a 529, is not subject to
Okay.
tax.
And I had a totally different question.
Okay.
You mentioned several disabilities. You didn't mention any mental health issues.
Yes. So mental health issues are covered under ABLE accounts. It kind of just depends. And I know that's a really
Hmm.
term that nobody likes. There's something called the Social Security Blue Book, which outlines, for a lot of services, what sort of disabilities qualify for services. And we can go through those on an individual basis or look through that. But we are seeing a lot of mental health ABLE accounts through some mass settlements that are happening for drugs like Risperdal, which is a drug that's been used for bipolar and things like that that have been improperly prescribed. So what we've done is when people get large settlement checks for medical malpractice and pharmaceutical lawsuits, we've opened up ABLE accounts for those folks. So when they get those settlement dollars, they don't break their benefit cap. So the answer is yes, it does apply to mental health. It's a little trickier on the diagnosis side, but that doesn't mean that they're not eligible. So I would always encourage you, if you think you're eligible, apply to get, and more often than not, you'll be approved as long as you're kind of receiving some or other service because of your disability. Other than that, I'm also here in my state capacity. So if you have any questions about services that the state's offering in response to COVID-19 or rental assistance or mortgage foreclosure assistance, happy to try to answer any of those or point you in the right direction if I can help.
Eric, this is Ellen Marquez again.
Yeah.
Okay, so did I hear you correctly that you can take your SSDI funds that are going into a different account and actually move them into the
You can.
ABLE account?
Families need to make that decision. However, they're going to make that decision. I can't tell you what to do. I've had families that have done that, particularly on the SSI side. I haven't seen it on the SSDI side. But if for some reason there was money left over, after you're meeting the needs of whatever you have for that month, you could put that money into the account.
Okay, yeah, because I'm looking at that, because with my daughter, she'll pay for whatever expenses she has that would come up, but if it started to affect that SSDI, I just wanted to know if I can move it over to that ABLE account.
Yes, you could. And I would note that if she's only receiving SSDI and not SSI, there are larger balances that won't affect benefits. I think it's about $300,000 a year in SSI, so that for some reason the balance is just different because it's set by state statute instead of federal statute. So you have a little bit more flexibility on the SSDI side.
Okay, and this is all, some of this is just hypothetical because she does not qualify because she's still a minor under me and her dad. And so once she turns 18 and we're going to, because we're going to start working on getting this SSI and SSDI, whatever it is she qualifies for, we're going to get that all set up. But I just want to make sure that, we're not going to make somebody mad by moving money because we don't want too much money sitting in an account.
Points on that, Ellen. One, for minors, so my biggest population that I like to help is those who are, in junior high, high school, and how can we help them start saving? Parents can sign that you're the guardian of someone who's under the age of 18 when you create the ABLE account, and then you can be in charge of those financial decisions until the point which they turn 18. When we talk about guardianships, it's a little bit different, but I don't think we need to talk about that just right now. So you could start contributing that money now, even though she's under the age of 18, if you wanted to. So when she started working, there might be a balance built up. But my advice is for every agency that you're dealing with, whether it's Social Security or Medicaid or welfare supportive services, the smartest thing to do, we talk to them on a regular basis, but sometimes the conversations I might have with leadership in an agency don't get down to the call center folks or to the rank and file office folks. So the best thing you can always do is talk to them and say, hey, I'm setting up an ABLE account. I have an ABLE account. Want to make sure this isn't going to impact my benefits. And they should be aware enough of the program to flag that. And then that way, at least you won't make any decisions. So if you do move money out of an account, like, it doesn't get questioned down the road. Because the last thing we want is for someone 60 to 90 days just because there was an error in the.
Yes, because I know with Voc Rehab, because we're working with them to get her the job training once we open up again, if we ever open up again, is to get her the training, and then her wages would go into the ABLE account, because I did open up the ABLE account. And everybody who is on here who has not opened up an ABLE account, Erik is right. It is truly very easy to open up these accounts with just the $25.
And you don't have to use it.
But
Yeah.
so yeah, so that is what exactly. And that's why it's like, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, like, her wages will go into the ABLE account. And I know, you know, she's been getting monies for, like, for Easter and her birthday, she got monies. And I watched her savings account, her regular savings account, go up to $1,200. And I said, yeah, no, I want less than that in there. So I moved money into the ABLE account so that that doesn't happen. But I, you know, so Voc Rehab knows about it. So when we start this process of getting her Social Security set up, we do have to inform them of the ABLE account. And do we need a statement showing what's in the ABLE account?
You may, but
it shouldn't be penalized.
no, it's just going to be to ensure that she's not over the $15,000 a year or the $100,000 or the $300,000 for SSDI limit. They might just want to know what's in it just to start services, because she's not getting SSDI now, correct? Correct. Yeah. So I wouldn't think that would be an unreasonable question for them to ask. But you know, that's why it's very easy if you keep good at counting and have those debit card checking options, that you can just pull that really quick.
Great. So Erik, we also have a question in the private chat. One of the students would like to know what is involved in switching your account from aggressive to conservative.
So that's very easy. You can either get in contact with me, or you can call that toll-free number, which I listed a little bit ago, if I can find it. Here we go. So if you call 888-609-8916, that's 888-609-8916. You'll call your ABLE account representative when you have an account. You can change your, this is important, so if you want to change your investment strategy, you can only do it once a year. So just because that it's expensive to move money around and those sorts of things. But it should be only about a 5 or 10 minute process to let them know that you were the person on the ABLE account, or you're the authorized person speaking on behalf of someone who has the ABLE account, and you'd like to change that investment strategy.
I have a question. Can you guys
Do you
hear
mean
me?
Oh, I see Stacy and Dora both have questions. Let's go ahead and start with Dora. Why don't you go ahead and start? Okay. And then Stacy, you can go right after that.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, Erik. Thank you so much for bringing this out. Hi. So my question is, because I do not get SSI or SSDI, but I do work. Am I eligible to do an ABLE account? Or is that only specifically for SSI and
No.
SSDI?
So I'm so glad you asked that
Thank
question.
you.
So you're automatically eligible if you have SSI or SSDI, but if you're not, you can still have an ABLE account, Dora, if the disability occurred before the age of 26. So I don't know when your blindness
Okay.
occurred.
I was born this way, Eric. I was born blind.
Good. Me too. And there's nothing we can do about it.
Okay, cool. I
So
know, but
if you need help with that, Dora, I'm happy to help you, but you would be
Yes.
eligible for an ABLE account.
Okay, and I'm putting myself out there. Do you have to be a U.S. citizen? Because I'm not.
Ooh. Unfortunately, I'm trying to do something. Don't tell anyone. But right now, you do have to have citizenship to receive benefits. We are working on something for undocumented citizens because it's very important to me.
Well, I do
let's
have
talk
like a
offline
social
about
security and everything. I'm legal to stay here. It's not like I'm undocumented or anything, but I'm not an LPR holder. But I'm what was my term? A legal present U.S. non-citizen. That's my thing.
Oh, that's nice and tricky.
That's my status.
Let me look into it. Because you're a legal resident.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I am. I'm a legal resident.
Even if you weren't, you're still
Okay, thank you.
you're still
Eric.
a beautiful person. So.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Take care. Thank you. Go ahead, Stacy. Thank you,
Okay.
Catherine and Ellen.
So, do you specifically, I think you answered this way, but do you specifically need to be an SSDI or SSI to open up a ABLE account?
No, you don't have to be. As long as you have a disability, you can be eligible for the ABLE account.
Okay. And does this connect? Okay, so say you have a checking account already, debit card. Does this transfer to your other banking account?
Yeah. So that's exactly what you can do with it.
Okay.
So if you have another checking account or a savings account, you can link this.
Mhm.
And why this is important, so if you're getting Medicaid or any sort of other program from the state that helps you get health care, we can make sure that the money that you earn isn't too much money, so you accidentally lose that Medicaid. So the great thing is, like, let's say you get a new job or something and you're making more money. This is a way to kind of make sure you don't make too much money in one account that you accidentally like lose your Medicaid or something.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have to do you have to be on Medicaid too to be eligible for that?
No, but I would argue if you're not receiving a lot of services, or there's not like one particular service you're receiving,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the benefit would be.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be, but like there's more benefit to you if you're getting either SSI, SSDI, food stamps, or any sort of other program like that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Eric, this is Ellen. Do you mind if I jump in for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so because it seems like everybody is asking about, do they have to have SSI or SSDI? And I'm looking, my daughter, of course, she's a minor. She has Down syndrome. And when I went and opened up her account, it was like, you know what, let's get this open so that when she does start receiving that, we know there's a place for her money, to keep her money separate. She does have a regular savings account where, if she wants to purchase something, we can pull from that. Her ABLE account is so that she can save money and so that her family has a place to put the money. But she does not have Medicaid. She does not have SSI. She does not have SSDI, but she still qualifies for the ABLE account because her disability started before the age of 26, and of course it started when she was born. So I hope that clarifies some of those questions that keep coming up that are the same.
Yes. Okay.
Anyone else?
Okay, this is Ellen, and Carrie, I hope you don't mind. You did ask me the question about opening an account for your toddler.
Hold on one
Yes,
second. Hold on one
and-
second. Ellen,
Yes.
let me go ahead and do this for you, okay? So we have two
Sure.
questions in the chat. The first one is, do you need a medical diagnosis for the disability? For example, the daughter has an IEP, but they are waiting on a neuropsych evaluation. So they doesn't look like they have a formal medical diagnosis.
So the answer is technically no, to sign up for the account. What I would do if you've got, because like I have a disability, I have a lot of paperwork too. If you've got like acknowledgement and documentation of the IEP, I would send that along. So when you sign up for an account, you'll get contacted by our ABLE group to just go over some paperwork and make sure that you can get everything kind of your T's crossed and your I's dotted. And that's what I would send them in that regard. But from my understanding, you don't need the medical diagnosis as long as you have something else that can prove that you have a disability.
And then we have another question from another student. Essentially, is there an age limit for opening up an ABLE account? Since Ellen obviously has one for her minor, is there, too young of an account to open an ABLE account?
No, there's no such thing as too young to open an ABLE account. And I think it's great if you've got a toddler or a newborn, just to create that sort of safety net, just in case they need it. The only thing that I would caution is if you're going to set up an account that young, let's just keep in mind or always monitor your income limits. So making sure that you're not breaking that $15,000 a year. You don't want to lose access to like early childhood intervention services or anything like that. And you're going to want to watch that top level benefit cap of like not making sure that that account gets over 100,000. I think it's important. This is not meant to be like a long-term savings account. It can be. It's more meant to be like a flexible account for people to use money when they need it. But if you're saving when they're that young, you could theoretically get that account up pretty high. It's just going to be important, and especially as Congress changes the limits, that you're just making sure that that balance doesn't get too high.
So the cap you said, Eric, just so we could invest annually or somehow and set that money aside and he would have it later, but you're saying it's not really an investment account.
It can be. So the only thing originally when these accounts were contemplated, they were contemplated as how we could help people with disabilities who were older and getting them independent. But one of the unintended consequences of that is they never put an age limit on. So the cool thing about it is if you were to put money in for a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old or whatever, that money would grow. And I would advise you to like start thinking about like investment strategies and like what makes the most sense for you. I can't tell you what to do, but like if you're going to put money in, you're going to want that money to grow. The only thing I would caution is you're just not going to, if you're putting like $5,000 a year into it or something like that's fine. But like when he's getting to age 15, you're just going to want to monitor. If you're not spending out of it and you're just putting it in, you're just going to want to make sure you don't get that account balance too high.
Right.
He might not be eligible for services later on if he needs it. Because like whereas he may not need services now, or maybe he does, like will he need the same services later on?
That's my thinking, is that it would be a way to build it. My husband and I had him really late in life. So we were thinking like, oh, maybe this would be something. So, because I'll be like 62 when the kid graduates high school. So
yeah, but
old. Yeah,
I think that's a great idea. But I think like figure out what works for your budget and like what's a good like monthly or yearly contribution. This is not meant to be a special needs trust. So things like property and stocks and those sorts of things. So like, don't ever try to do that for this. Like there are other vehicles that are better for like larger assets. But this is really good for what you're thinking about, though.
Okay, yeah, no, this would just be for him for later, should he have something come up that he needs.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
it? Okay,
and
great.
the
Thank
cool
you
thing
for that.
is, if the account was set up, let's say something comes up and he needs to buy a car or assistive technology or things like that, and that money's built up, like he might be able to do that easily. And the mechanics set up, so let's say he can work while in high school or after high school. There's something set up to, you know, at least like
That's
aid him
awesome.
in that.
I mean,
Rather than
could
having to
you
I think it's great.
pull it out, like a proportion of it out, so he's not 18 with access to $100,000 kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a couple things. One, if he's under 18, parents are still in control of the finances, just like you'd be in control with any other finances. I do think you're going to want to just look at, like, when he's turning 18, like, what does that account balance look like? Do you want to give it, like, I know for myself, and I have a mild disability, but like I should never have been given $100,000 to go, like, right,
18-year-old should be. Yeah.
So I think, like, that's a conversation you need to have. But and there's no reason you can't spend it if life comes up. Like, I ran out of insurance benefits for orthotics when I was 3 years old. Like, if we would have had an ABLE account when I was growing up, we could have used that money.
Okay.
When medical
So you
expenses
can cover
came
medical
up.
expenses,
Yes,
should he? Because he's got some vision things, and okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so if he needed surgery.
Yeah, or
Oh,
glasses,
cool. Okay.
or whatever. Right?
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that.
Yes, Eric, this is Ellen. Carrie, to add on to some of that is what I do is, because my daughter is in braces and we actually finished paying off her braces. Once she comes out of the braces, she's going to need implants. So the money that I would be paying towards those braces, I actually put away every month into her ABLE account, so that when her implants come up, she has the money to pay for those implants.
So it can also substitute like a health spending account.
Yeah.
Great, cool. Okay, thank you, Ellen. Thanks, Eric.
And just so that you all know too, I've gotten all of my information from Erik. Erik is amazing. So, I mean, reach out to him, send him emails, try and call him on his cell phone. You know, he does get back to you. He is a wealth of knowledge when it comes down to these ABLE accounts.
Yep, and this is my favorite part of the presentation, which I'm quickly learning is my least favorite part. But if you ever need anything, my cell phone is 702-480-9338. 702-480-9338. I get busy sometimes, but I will always get back to you, and we're happy to work out, because this is complicated and everybody's circumstances are different, so I understand that. But to the extent if you need any help or questions or just like resources to get pointed in the right direction, I'm happy to help.
And I will also be sending out this information to you guys via email, so that you have that information from him as well. And you guys can also reach out to him personally for any more detailed questions that you may not want to share with the whole class. Is there any other questions? You can send them via chat or unmute yourself now.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Catherine and Ellen and everybody.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Well, thank you all so much. Stay safe. Thank you, Eric.
No problem.